Hello and welcome to Maths with Mr Amison. In this video we're going to be practicing how to convert between fractions, decimals and percentages. If you need to recap this topic, then please watch Mr Chowdhury's video. I'm going to show you an example, then I'm going to talk through it, and then I'm going to give you some time to copy it down and have a go at the question on the right. If you need to pause at any time, feel free to do so. If we look at this first example, 45% to a fraction and a decimal, well, percent means per 100, so 45% is 45 out of 100, which we can simplify to 9/20ths, because we can divide the numerator and denominator by 5. 45% also, because it means 45 out of 100, it means 45 divided by 100. So 45 divided by 100 is 0.45. To convert 3/5 to a decimal and a percentage, well, we could find an equivalent fraction. So we have a denominator that is a multiple of 10. That would really help. So in this case, 3/5 is the same as 6/10 if you multiply the numerator and denominator by 2. And then 6 divided by 10 is 0.6. We could also recognise that 3/5 means 3 divided by 5. And we could just do 3 divided by 5 as is with the bus stop method. 3 divided by 5, well, 5 doesn't go into 3 any time, so we have to put the decimal point and the 0 here, so 3.0. So 5 goes into 3 0 times with a remainder of 3. 5 goes into 30 6 times, so we get 0.6. So two different ways of getting 0.6. Then if we have 6/10, to convert that to a percentage, well, that's the same as 60 over 100, which means it's 60% because percent is over 100. Or we could multiply our decimal by 100 to get the percentage, and that's a general way of converting a decimal to a percentage. So you could calculate the decimal first and use the answer to get the percentage, or you could go to the percentage straight from the fraction. To convert 0.02 to a fraction and percentage, well, percentage is the easiest one first. You just have to multiply the decimal by 100 and we get 2%. It's also worth recognising that 0.02, the 2 is in the hundredths column, which means it's 2 hundredths, 2 over 100, which simplifies to 1 over 50. Or we could use the percentage. 2% is 2 over 100, 2 per 100, which is 1/50th when you simplify by dividing the numerator and denominator by 2. So take some time to copy that down, make sure you understand, and then have a go at the question on the right. Now you've had a chance to have a go, let's go through this. So to convert 0.5% to a fraction and a decimal, well, first of all, 0.5% is 0.5 over 100, which looks a bit weird because you've got a decimal over 100. But if you multiply the numerator and denominator by 10, you can see that this is just 5 over 1,000, which simplifies to 1/200th when you divide the numerator and denominator by 5. To convert to a decimal, well, this is 0.5%, so 0.5 per 100, or divided by 100, which is 0.005. To convert 6/5 to a decimal and percentage, well, this one's interesting because it's a top-heavy fraction. It's an improper fraction, but it's still fine. We can still do the same method. We can convert it to 12/10, which means 12 divided by 10, which is 1.2. Notice that 6/5 is double the 3/5, so this makes a lot of sense. We could also then, now we've got the 12/10, make it 120 over 100 by multiplying both the numerator and denominator by 10 to get 120 over 100, so 120%. Notice that 120% is a valid percentage. Just because it's above 100% doesn't mean it's impossible. We could also recognise that 6/5 is 6 divided by 5, which we can use the bus stop method for. 5 goes into 6 one time, remainder 1, and then 5 goes into 10 2 times, so we get 1.2 again. And then we could use that 1.2, multiply it by 100 to get the percentage. So 2 different ways of doing that. To convert 0.625 to a fraction and percentage, well, what we have there is 0.625 multiplied by 100 to get the percentage, 62.5%. And then we can use that to get our answer as a fraction. Put that over 100, multiply by 10 to get rid of the decimal on the numerator. So multiply the numerator and denominator by 10, and then simplify that fraction. And when it's fully simplified, we get 5/8. The other method is to recognise that this is 625 thousandths. So we could put this as 625 over 1,000. And the reason we know it's 625 thousandths is because the 5 here is in the thousandths column. So that we have 600 thousandths, 20 thousandths, and 5 thousandths. So 625 thousandths all together. So here are 6 questions for you to try. Fill in the blanks in the table. They do get quite tricky when it comes to question 5 and 6. Think about it logically. Have a go. So here's the answers to those problems. 4/5 is 0.8 because it's 8/10, which is 80% because it's 80 over 100. 0.4, well that's half of 0.8, so it should be half as big as the fraction, so 2/5 instead of 4/5. Or we could recognise that that's 4/10, which simplifies to 2/5. And 40% because 0.4 times by 100 is 40. 400%, well that's 10 times bigger than the 40%, so the decimal should be 10 times bigger, which makes sense. 400%, if we divide that 400 by 100, we get 4 as our decimal. Notice just because it says decimal doesn't mean it has to have a decimal point. And the fraction, well, 4 over 1, 8 over 2, simply put, 4 over 1 is the simplest form, but generally we wouldn't bother with a fraction for this. But it's useful to know that 4 can be written as 4 over 1. Any integer can be written as the number itself over 1. Alright, question 2. 1.2 as a decimal, multiply by 100, you get 120. So it's 120%. 1.2 is the same as 12 over 10, or 12 divided by 10. So that simplifies to 6 over 5. 12 over 100, 12 divided by 100 is 0.12, so we get that. And 0.12 times 100, is 12, so it's 12%. Or you can see from the fraction, we already have 12 over 100, so it's 12%. 1.2%, first time we've got a decimal percentage there. 1.2 divided by 100 is 0.012, so we have that as a decimal. And then there we have 12 thousandths, which simplifies to 3 over 125. Question 3, 0.3%, divide that by 100, you get 0.003, which is 3 thousandths. 3/15, well, we could change 3/15 into a nicer fraction. 3/15 simplifies to 1/5, which is the same as 2/10, so 0.2. And 0.2 times 100 is 20%. Alright, so 0.03 as a decimal, if we multiply by 100 we get 3, therefore 0.03 is the same as 3%. And 3% is 3 per 100, so 3 over 100, which doesn't simplify. Question 4, 1,830. You have to multiply that by 100 still to get the percentage, so you get 183,000%, which sounds odd, but it's still valid. And like I said before, any integer can be written as itself over 1, so 1,830 over 1. 1,830% if we divide that by 100, we get 18.3. And then 18.3 is the same as 183 divided by 10, so we get 183 over 10. 18 over 30, we can divide the numerator and denominator there by 3, so that becomes 6 over 10, or 0.6, which is the same as 60 over 100, or 60%. For question 5, AB, where A and B are digits, that means they are integer whole numbers, and they are between 0 and 9. So we have AB, which could represent 25 or 37 or whatever you want, but generically it's AB. So as a percentage, if we multiply that by 100, then we get AB00 as our digits, so it's AB00%. And because AB is an integer, we can write that as AB over 1. For the next one, AB over 10, if we divide AB by 10, then we get A point B, where A and B are digits. If A and B were not digits and they were normal algebra, AB would mean A times B. It wouldn't work like this, so you've got to be careful. A point B multiplied by 100 becomes AB0, so we get AB0%. Finally, AB percent is the same as AB over 100, and if we divide AB by 100, we get 0.AB. Question 6, to fill in the blanks. Right, this is fairly tricky, but if you think about it logically, you can work this out. We have 1.7 because something 0.7 times 100 is 1 something something. The 7 is in the tenths column, it would go to the tens column, so the 7 is in the tens column in the percentage, and the 1 is in the hundreds column in the percentage. If we divide that by 100, that 1 would move to the ones column, so it would become 1.7. And the ones column of the percentage would be the digit after the 7 in the decimal, which is a 0, so it should be 170%. Once we've got that, 1.7 is the same as 17 divided by 10, or 170 over 100 for the percentage, which simplifies to 17 over 10. For the next one, 2 is the same as something over 5. Well, something divided by 5 is 2, that something has to be 10, which makes sense. And then if you multiply that 2 by 100, we get 200%. Apologies for missing out the percentage sign there, but it is 200%. For the last part, we have something over 125, and we have 1 point something percent. Well, 1 point something percent, if we divide by 100, we get 0.01 something, so that helps us with the first part of the decimal. Something over 125, well, if you went logically through this, 1 over 125 would be 0.8%, or 0.008. 2 over 125 would be 0.016, and 3 over 125 would be 0.024. So the only possible number that works there is 2 over 125 to have the 1 point something percent. So it has to be 0.016 and 1.6%. I know that last one was fairly tricky, but thanks for watching. I hope you found it useful, and bye for now.